Hello, fellow readers and booktubers. I would like to propose a tag that I will call the Obiter Dictum, which is Latin, which means something along the lines of something said in passing, a passing remark. The plural of that is Obiter Dicta, things said in passing. You usually encounter this term in legal documents. A judge will give a ruling on something, and within that ruling, there might be a sentence or two, or maybe even an entire paragraph, in which the judge will include something that's not, strictly speaking, relevant to the case or relevant to his opinion. It's just an interesting observation the judge may have made, or he's just throwing in a kind of a random comment that's only tangentially related to the case. Although the obiter dictum or the obiter dicta might be referred to in a later case in a more relevant way. At any rate, the expression, it just means something said in passing, not completely relevant. Well, I've noticed in a lot of books, both fiction and nonfiction, occasionally an author will include something that's not completely relevant to the story he's telling or to the incident that he's writing about, the historical event or the personality that he's referring to. But still, it's kind of an interesting remark that will be thrown out there. Now, I'm not talking about that characteristic that you find in what is now called bro fiction, where you might find a secret agent is hiding in the Great North Woods, and he has to fend for himself, so he has to hunt for his own food, and then suddenly you get 3 pages that explain how to build a rabbit trap. That's not an obiter dictum. I'm not talking about that kind of thing. This is a comment that will appear in fiction or nonfiction that just kind of explains something or makes a comment on something that, again, is not strictly related to the text or only tangentially so. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Harold Bloom. I mentioned this book as one of my favorite books of last year. It's Bloom's last book. He had died not long after writing this. And it's kind of his swan song to his love of literature, particularly the Romantic poets. And Bloom always had a tendency to digress in his books. He kind of goes off on these tangents. So if you're looking for some good obiter dicta, you'd probably find something like this in Bloom. And here's a specific case. In this book, in this chapter on the poetry of Percy Bysshe Shelley, he's talking about one poem of Shelley's in which Shelley will use the phrase, "that seldom heard mysterious sound." And in the context of the poem, what Shelley is talking about is the music of the spheres. This was this old idea that in the quiet of the night, if you listened very carefully, you could hear like the angelic choirs humming in the distance. And that's all Bloom had to say about it by way of explanation. But instead, he quotes at length from a book by John Hollander published in 1961 called The Untuning of the Sky, which explains the origin of this idea of the music of the spheres. I just want to read this to you, and then we'll talk about how this is a good example of an obiter dictum. This is Bloom quoting John Hollander. In the Republic, Book 10, Socrates' relation of the myth of includes mention of this Pythagorean myth. That's the music of the spheres. It describes the heavenly spheres bearing on the upper surface of each a siren, kind of like an angelic or a demon or something riding on the sphere. A siren who goes around with the spheres, hymning a single tone or note. The 8 together form one harmony. That's the 8 planets, form one harmony. It is not, of course, that we are to think of the chord of 8 tones here. Rather, the harmony is an ordered intervallic relationship among all of these tones, more in the manner of the intervals obtainable by step or skip in a scale. The singing siren that produces the tone on each sphere, of course, becomes beautifully adaptable, eventually to membership in a Christian angelic choir. But the more common version of the myth, such as is put down elaborately by Aristotle in De Caelo, maintained that it was the rubbing against each other of the supposedly hard, glassy celestial spheres that produced the sound. In answer to the objection that no mortal has ever heard the music, it was often retorted that the constant droning of the noise deadened the ears of earthly inhabitants by custom alone, and that because it was so constant, it had become inaudible. Now, Bloom didn't have to include this this kind of lengthy explanation of the history of the belief in the music of the spheres. A simple sentence would have covered this quite well, but he throws it in there. That's an obiter dictum, something said in passing, tangentially relevant to the bigger text, which was a study of the poetry of Percy Bysshe Shelley, but still it's there. So I thought it'd be kind of interesting to kind of collect these obiter dicta from various authors in fiction and nonfiction. I think this is something that might have been done among readers in the past to maintain a book of just quotes from other books that include these little comments said in passing. Anyway, I'm suggesting this as a possible tag. I don't know if this is still a thing. I'd be interested to see your comments. If you want to just include quotes from books that you're reading, fiction and nonfiction, that include obiter dicta, I think that would be kind of fun for everyone to look at. That's all I've got for you now. Keep reading, stay strong, and peace to you all.